Welcome to the HasMedia Podcast. My name is Owner.
My name is Okan.
And our guest today is Adam Elias. Not Elias, not Elias. Elias.
It's Elias, but I won't cry if you say Elias.
So you're in estate planning. You're a lawyer, right?
Yes, sir.
How did you get into the field of law?
So, I grew up in an immigrant household. My father was much older when he had me. He was about 45 years old when I was born. I'm an immigrant myself. Came in from Egypt when I was 4 years old. The only conversation I really had with my father for 18 years was, you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. It wasn't really about birds and bees. It wasn't really about the game last night. It's like, which is it going to be? Doctor, lawyer, accountant. So, you hear that enough times over the course of 18 years of your life. It kind of starts to imprint on your brain a bit. I was a straight C student in science. I think I got a D in chemistry, so I was never going to become a doctor. Wanted to get into business. I always had a knack for business. Rutgers, where I went for undergrad, their business school was a little hard to get into. I remember there were like 6 prerequisites, including calculus. I took pre-calculus twice. I failed it and got a D the second time. Again, that wasn't even one of the prereqs. So kind of knew by the end of my first year of college that I wasn't going to be going into business school. So I actually took some courses and stuff on HR, human resources, thought that, I'm very good with people, very sociable, always had no problem making friends. A couple of the HR classes with employment law. And the idea was you go to school for 4 years, you got to get your master's in this economy. And that, remember, I was going to school from 2006 to 2010, so that was right in the brunt of the Great Recession. So getting your master's became kind of non-negotiable at that point. When I started taking these employment law classes, I figured it's another year to go into law school and learn more about not just employment law, but really open the door to a lot more different areas. So that kind of became a no-brainer. And I went to law school straight out of college. I knew a lot of kids that would take a year or two off. I just felt that if I did that, I'd never go back to school. Once I started making money, I'd never go back. So went right into law school. And before you know it, labor and employment law is no longer really the interest. Then it became criminal law. When I graduated law school in 2013, I graduated Rutgers Law School. I worked for a judge in Union County, a criminal judge. Took that experience down to Burlington County as an assistant prosecutor. Then I got engaged. I was making about $51,000 a year as a prosecutor. I think my wedding was that and a half, so I couldn't really support a family on that salary. And my wife had no interest in living in Burlington County. Beautiful place, but just not what we were used to growing up in Middlesex. So moved back up to Middlesex County, lived at home for a year while we were planning our wedding, got a job working for Geico. So in the law world, when you're trying to be a trial lawyer, if you want to understand trial from a criminal perspective, you have to really get your feet wet as in either a prosecutor's office or a public defender's office, because you're going to get a lot more volume, a lot more cases that way. In the civil world, if you want to get that exposure, you'll go work at an insurance defense firm for one of these insurance companies. They have in-house operations to really handle all those claims. People don't realize that if they get into a car accident and someone sues them, maybe a year or two later to cover for damages to their insurance, your insurance policy covers counsel. You don't have to pay that out of your pocket. That's not over and above what your insurance covers. And if you did something that you shouldn't have been doing, like drinking and driving, your insurance may drop you, but they'll definitely drop you if you don't cooperate. Right. So you have to take that seriously. When you get a lawsuit, you take it to the insurance defense team, and they take it from there. So I did that for a year at Geico. I got a few trials under my belt, which was fun. It's fun to get in front of a jury, especially on a defense side of personal injury, where you see people with their better just call Saul claims, whether I got the the neck brace.
What was your longest trial?
My longest trial was about 4 or 5 days. With personal injury, the hardest part about trial is picking a jury. That could be sometimes more time consuming than the trial itself. In personal injury, they had a more expedited trial way where we may not necessarily need to call doctors. We can testify and submit reports. But generally speaking, you want to actually have the doctor's testimony, doctors on stand, and be able to cross-examine them. But it was fun. Then I went to work for these 2 gentlemen who were in a civil rights firm. They were beasts. They would really sue a lot of corrupt municipal governments in New Jersey. They'd sue corrupt police departments. I mean, they were very much pro law enforcement. They had a lot of friends and allies that were in law enforcement, but they had no problem calling out the bad apples. And very aggressive litigators. But for me, by that point, I had already determined that I was going to have my own practice, and that's what I did in March 2017. March 15th hit 9 years being a solopreneur, and I went out.
Congrats.
Thank you. I went out and started my own practice. Take whatever work you can get when you're on your own.
What was that kind of click that you wanted to start your own practice?
That click, I think, really started in college. I just really appreciated business and entrepreneurism. I really had a knack for just, I ran a fraternity in college, ran the operations of making money, having ideas, and really just being your own boss. And it's something that I took away from everything that my dad said growing up. He always said you had to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and I think that's an immigrant mentality. They want you to have a skill-based, needed job. His whole real premise was those are jobs that people always need. No matter how the economy is doing, you need doctors. No matter how the economy is doing, whether a business is succeeding or failing, it needs an accountant to manage the numbers.
Recession-proof.
Exactly, recession-proof. And lawyers, and not every country in the world necessarily values lawyers, but the United States, it's a very litigious country. And we use lawyers on demand all the time for everything. Lawyers are not paid necessarily a lot of money in other countries overseas, but lawyer is a very successful field here in the United States. So I decided to go on my own because I wanted to be my own boss. Now, what I was trying to say about my dad was the one thing he never told me to do was have your own business. And I think that's the real secret to America. The real secret to the United States is writing your own tax return and not having the tax return write you. Right? When you're a W-2 employee, your life is dictated by a number. Like all your decision making, everything that you do, you're doing it within the framework of a budget based on how much you get paid. When you're self-employed, you flip the script. When I start the year as a self-employed business owner, I say, how much money do I need to make this year to meet my goals? And that changes everything. And then when you file your taxes, you determine how much do I need to pay the government based on how much I made.
Right.
And
the more you can kind of predict it now.
Yeah, you could predict it, but you could also plan, tax planning. It's a very fundamental skill that I've now implemented in my practice. I do estate planning and I do real estate financing because when I went on my own, I did a lot of real estate closings. Some parts of New Jersey, some states in the country do not use lawyers for real estate closings, but in central North Jersey, where real estates are much larger investments, having a real estate attorney for a minimal cost is really smart. Branched out from there during the pandemic, got into the mortgage business, got into title insurance business, even had a RE/MAX for all of about 11 months, and really found a knack for the mortgage business because it had a lot of the parallel skills of being a lawyer, problem solving. Finding how to think outside the box. You're working with guidelines in the mortgage business like we work with laws as a lawyer, and you need to know how to interpret those guidelines, how to apply them, and how to really educate underwriters who may not be thinking about them as deeply as you are, why it fits the underwriting guideline and why it doesn't. So that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. And I'm now having that tax planning skill that I built over time. Just from that first year where I was on my own, I did my own taxes. I went on QuickBooks, I tracked my expenses, and just learned to do my own tax returns. I had an accountant who would really, for all intents and purposes, just rubber stamp the return. Like I'd go there and ask him questions, and they were really just questions to confirm what I believed my understanding of tax law was, and he would just, for the most part, say, yeah, that's a good idea. So after a while, you start to wonder, well, what the hell's the accountant doing for it? But there are still a lot of people out there who don't have that kind of knowledge, and they do benefit greatly from an accountant. But accountants are not by trade really there to plan. The business model doesn't really justify spending time working on a plan retainer with a client. They'd rather do a volume of tax preparation. And now with increases in tax preparers who are not accountants, there's a lot more tax preparation businesses, there's a lot more tax preparation software. Before you know it, there will be tax preparation AI going full speed.
True.
That branch of accounting will become obsolete. And they have focused more now on auditing, financial audits, whether that's auditing by the IRS, whether it's internal auditing for companies that may be acquiring. It's an important skill set. But I think that as a lawyer who's now back in law school, getting my master's of law, which is like a little bit more of a specialized law degree in tax. Having that background, being able to discuss tax planning with my clients in the holistic sense of planning their estate, figuring out, and really estate planning is based on tax planning. The fundamental line, I could tell you the summary of estate planning in one sentence is, do I pay more in income tax or in estate tax? And that's what estate planning truly comes down to. There are obviously more layers to it in terms of protecting minors with special needs, Medicaid planning. There's a lot of different nuances to estate planning, but the real bulk of it is, especially for ultra net worth, high net worth individuals, is do I want to pay more in income tax or am I going to pay more in estate tax, and planning around that.
And it's either or?
Usually. You're balancing the two out. Today in New Jersey, we don't have an estate tax. We used to have an estate tax at a threshold of $675,000. So if your estate was worth $675,000, anything above and over that was subject to a 40% tax right off the bat.
Oh, shit.
So the federal government also has an estate tax. And during the Obama years, it was about $1 million threshold. Donald Trump got elected president in 2016, and part of the Tax Cuts Jobs Act, that he raised it to $12.5 million threshold, and that's per person. So if you're married, that was a $25 million threshold. So that law that he created in 2018, 2019, when he got elected, he had a Republican Congress. He was able to pass that law very fast. Those laws regarding the estate tax were set to expire at the end of 2025. And when everyone was looking to see who our next president was going to be during the Trump and Harris election, I was really more curious as an estate planner who was going to win Congress, because I wanted to see what was going to happen to that cut. For a lot of estate planning lawyers who had made a living off of that part of estate planning, tax planning, they really didn't have much work at a $14 million threshold unless their client base was ultra high net worth. But if we're dealing with everyday New Jersey residents, it's not really the case. So the question became whether they were going to cut it or leave it the same. And sure enough, Trump gets elected. He gets a Republican Congress. The Big Beautiful Bill Act now comes out. They extend those thresholds, and they actually raise them to $15 million a person.
Wow.
So now people that have a $30 million net worth or less don't have to worry about that tax. And then it comes down to the states.
But how does that tax work? Is it on the income that you're receiving, or
That's just on the value of your estate. So when you hear,
you have to pay that every year?
No, it's a one-time hit from, they know that people are going to use mechanisms to pass wealth from one generation to another. And so far as you do proper trust planning, you don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. But for people that don't, the government wants its slice. You hear the movement from younger parts of our government, like the AOCs of the world, or Mamdani now in New York City, talk about taxing the wealth tax. This is what the wealth tax is. Effectively, it's taxing the estate so that intergenerational wealth pays its fair share to the federal government.
So it's lowering their threshold.
Lowering their threshold. So even Mamdani just came out the gate saying he wants to lower the New York City threshold to $750,000.
That's a crazy.
Tell me you want to bankrupt your city's residents without telling me you want to bankrupt your city's residents.
I mean, literally.
But really, if you have proper trust planning, you could avoid it, because there's your estate, right? What you own into your name and what the trust owns. And that's the delicate balance that a good estate planning lawyer has to reach.
But how do you decide what's fair in like a federal and governmental level of, is it 12.5 million, 15 million, 20 million? Like what's a fair threshold?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it really comes down to negotiating. That's what Congress has done, right? They're trying to negotiate thresholds. They're looking at studies and trying to see how many families would be affected by the numbers. I mean, even when it was at $1 to $3 million, the estate tax, when you look at the actual tax base of revenue that's collected, it's always accounted for a very marginal amount of money. We're talking like 1 to 5% of the collections for income tax is attributed to estate tax. But I think as we get older, especially, we look at the three of us, we are going into an age where the baby boomer generation is retiring. They say 10,000 baby boomers retiring a day. That's from 1945 to 1964. So the youngest baby boomer this year will turn 62, meaning that that's the youngest. So mind you, there's a huge wave of them that are higher that have been retiring, and they're going to continue to retire for the next 20 years. So the big thing that we talk about is the silver tsunami, right? The transfer of wealth that's coming from our parents, our grandparents' generations who have, amassed a lot of wealth through small business, through inheritance. That's now going to come down to the millennials.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Social Security is facing a very critical moment. Social Security was designed at a time where one person's Social Security would be funded by like 6 different people's tax contributions. That statistic has been reduced dramatically. So now there are a lot less younger people than there are retirees. So the more retirees there are for us to support, the less money we have to be able to contribute to their Social Security system. So that's why they say, by most modest projections, by 2035, 2040, Social Security is going to have a real problem staying afloat.
Not to mention they were like embezzling money like not too long ago.
Well, that's really an issue that it's been used as a reserve fund for many years. Every year we're 7.5% of our paychecks between Medicare and Social Security gets set aside, and it's a slush fund.
So what happens when that collapses?
When that collapses, one of two things happens. It's either rest in peace Social Security, or it's how do you fund it? And the only way you fund it at that point is taxing the wealth. So when AOCs of the world, well, it seems like for the most part, she doesn't really understand what she's talking about. And I would suggest that she probably doesn't for the most part. But like the Green New Deal, I don't know where that was going. But her position on estate taxes, I think you're going to find that it's going to become a broader consensus as we get to a point where we realize, we may not see Social Security.
I feel like that's like such ass backwards. Like, why wouldn't they make the system where but this might be stupid, but I don't know. I'm just going to say it. It's just because it just came to my mind. But like, if you're paying taxes on your own behalf, like that money compounds over the next 40, 50 years. If they require you to put aside $50 to $100 a month or whatever as like a standard residence, by the time you're in your 60s, 70s, you're over $1 million.
Well, keep in mind, though, that they're not really, and listen, what you're saying is common sense, right? If we just took the money aside, no one really saves, statistically speaking. The average person doesn't really save a lot of money if we were all forced
because
to
we're getting
save.
taxed at like a 50%
Right.
rate.
It's hard to think about savings and retirement when every last dollar of your paycheck is going to Social Security, state income tax, federal income tax. It's nonstop. If we were able to take 7.5% of our revenue and put it in our pocket and invest it privately, what amazing things we could do with it.
100%.
But the system was not designed for you. It was designed for me. That's the attitude behind it. Social Security was created after the Great Depression when it was made as a safety net. They wanted to make sure that everybody had some baseline income should another catastrophic event take place. Now, as an estate planning lawyer, I talk to a lot of clients who may be fully employed. They may be collecting a pension from a former government position that they had. They may also be entrepreneurs who are collecting a side income, and they're getting full Social Security. So great to them, but that money, should there maybe be a threshold at some point where we ask if a person is working full time, maybe they get a reduced amount of Social Security, maybe they get no Social Security until they actually are retired? These are questions that I think we're going to really have to ask. When we talk about student loans, to me, it's always funny that it's an all or nothing approach. Forgive the student loans or don't.
Right.
Whereas I think there's a middle ground here. How about we just amortize it better, where every month when you make a payment, some of it actually goes towards your principal. No, instead it all goes towards your interest.
Right.
So when you go on an income-based plan, which most of us have to do when we're in our 20s and 30s, they'd go, all right, 10% of your income is going to go to student loans. So that significantly decreases your payment. But then I used to laugh when my wife and I got married. Together we had about $400,000 in student loan debt. She was a physical therapist. I was an attorney. And we'd make these income-based payments, but at 8-9% interest, it would just swallow our interest payment whole. You're just seeing no progress. It was a joke.
Yeah, wow.
So if you just amortize it and say,
not to mention, it's not even a tax write-off.
The tax write-off is limited to $2,500.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's a huge debt for most people. And that's the thing, like that middle ground approach, instead of saying, let's forgive student loans or let's do nothing about it, let's take incremental steps. Let's raise the deduction to maybe $5,000 or dollar for dollar, right? Let's amortize it. It's amortized over a 10-year now. That's the standard plan. But if I'm going to go into an income-based plan of 20 years, 25 years, let me put some of that money to the principal.
Like if they're allowed to charge me, if Sally Mae is allowed to charge me, because yeah, it's 12% a month, or 12% a year, or whatever, or 9% a year. But if you really break it down and only paying interest first, I mean, they're basically making like 500% back on their money. You know what I mean? By the end of the loan term. So it's like, if they can make 500%, then let me be able to deduct the full amount for the year that I paid. Because at that point, it's like, then I don't have to pay that extra 50% in taxes. Now I actually have money to survive.
But that's why they don't mind doing a 25-year plan with the forgiveness at the end, because by that point, they've made so much money off you in interest that it's just fugazi money at that point. But what people don't realize is that the way the law is designed right now, if you do have a forgiveness event, okay, so let's say you are paying interest for 25 years and no one knows what's going to play out in the next 20 years. We don't know what's going to play out in the government in the next year, next month. Yeah. But if you
next hour.
Right? If you have a balance, let's say you have $100,000, if not more, by the time that 25-year income-based period has elapsed, and they're going to forgive that. Well, forgiveness of money owed in the tax code constitutes income. So if the government forgives $100,000 or discharges a debt of $100,000, that $100,000 effectively on your income tax returns turns into income. So if you made $250,000 that year, you actually made $350,000 that year.
That's insane.
So you are going to get taxed. You're going to bite again at the back end.
So you got to pay taxes on that $100,000.
Yeah, unless you're a public service employee, in which case part of that forgiveness plan is that gets forgiven and there's no tax on it.
So you're basically paying $50,000 in taxes.
So they're getting their money somehow.
Yeah, and
that's crazy.
Whether you like Donald Trump or not, you got to love how he's unapologetically honest about how government works. And when asked about student loans, he says, "That's how we make money. Why would we forgive it? That's the most reliable revenue source the government has. They're not going to forgive it, ever." So anyone at home that's really planning on the forgiveness, that's really budgeting and forecasting and planning, you could stop. They're never going to forgive your student loans.
That was good. I like that.
Oh, God.
You can stop now. But when I do financial planning or tax planning with clients, I always tell them, like, Social Security to me is not even, that doesn't even come into the equation, because I don't know what's going to happen with it, and I sure as hell don't plan for it.
Yeah.
And my father's older right now. He's 83. He just turned 83 last month. God bless. And he thinks that I'm being too pessimistic about it. He says there's always going to be Social Security. It's just a matter of how they're going to fund it.
Right.
But for me, and that's part of really the entrepreneurial insight of why you become an entrepreneur, is I don't really want to rely on anybody to get ahead. I don't want to rely on anybody to determine what's going to happen to me. Right. I don't need to wait for companies to decide they're going to downsize me or the economy to crash. I'll find my own way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd say kind of just go into what you are doing now on a day-to-day basis, kind of, for the audience that doesn't know.
Right now, I'm all in on AI. AI has been around now for, I guess, like with the internet, right? When the AOL came out, I was 8 years old when AOL came out, and that was, we were on AOL Instant Messenger in elementary school. It was all the jam. We had the cool screen names, but you come to learn as you get older that the internet was actually around a little bit longer than that.
Right.
It just didn't become mainstream until about 97, 98, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with AI. AI has been around for...
Underground CIA operative.
Yeah.
That's how it started, right?
I think so. There's they talk like creator of the internet, like that died a couple of years ago, and it's like, who? You don't hear about these people. You don't know who this guy was, but somebody created the internet like in the late 80s, early 90s. It didn't come out with America Online.
It's like the traffic light. No one knows who did that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to picture there was like a database of people that were all day controlling traffic lights. I didn't realize that this stuff was automated. I thought,
that's what I actually thought. Too,
right? I thought there was like a whole data control center somewhere where people actually controlled it, but that's absolutely not the case. Yeah. But I think that really is kind of like the genesis.
You just like unlocked like a childhood memory.
Yeah. By the way, I have no idea what you were talking about before.
How the internet started.
Yeah, and a CIA operative. What's that about?
Like the CIA, apparently the CIA created like the internet network.
Oh.
Like the early internet was created by the government.
So what we use and rely on was created by spies.
Basically.
We have to fact check that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
While he's fact checking that. No, so AI, has been around for a few years. It just became mainstream in 2022 or 2023 with ChatGPT, right? Sam Altman. I like to often analogize the ChatGPT movement to America Online. He made it mainstream. He really put it in everyone's household. You know, it's free to $20 a month for a plan, which is insanely.
Not CIA. Sorry to cut you off. It's the U.S. Department of Defense's Advanced Research Project Agency.
Yeah, it was probably
so the CIA. Which is probably it specifically says no. The CIA did not create it.
There's an asterisk next to that, so it's okay. So, is the government behind AI though?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think AI kind of just. I think it kind of just came about on its own. It's just good computing. Like when I talk about AI with someone in my family or someone in my network that is in software, they look at you like the ultimate hipster. They just look at you like, oh, AI, whoop-de-doo. They're just so unimpressed by it, right? Like one guy said it best to me. He said, it's machine learning. That's all it ever was, is machine learning. It's just now has a better interface. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I don't know what you're saying, but all I know is I can do things now that I could never do before.
Absolutely. and much faster.
I could do things faster, more efficiently. I could let my imagination really run wild, and my brain speed, as far as the 100 miles an hour that it goes in, run wild as well with AI.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest breakthrough that's going to happen for a lot of business owners, is that you're going to be able to think about an idea or problem that you're having, like right now. You don't have to search the internet for a company that, you know, solves that problem. You can literally solve that problem within the next hour if you wanted to.
Yeah. And some of the AI will start by getting you Google research. But the thing is, like, Google's more fragmented, right? Like, if you have that instinct, that Google instinct to Google everything, which I think sometimes we underappreciate how much people don't have that. You know, I have that instinct. I'll Google things all day. People will ask me questions. Even when I was first coming out of law school, someone would ask me a legal question. The first thing I would do was Google it, just to kind of get a baseline understanding, right? But I say to these people, you know, this is before I was a lawyer. As a lawyer, I cannot tell a client to go get their answer from Google because that's not necessarily reliable information. But I was in law school, for example. People would ask me legal questions. They just assumed that as soon as I got into law school, I became a legal expert. Listen, it's humbling, it's cool, but there's a lot we don't know. You know, I had one friend in college ask me, so when you go to law school, you just like learn all the laws? I'm like, dude, that's a lot of laws if you're going to do that. You don't learn all the laws. Right. I took a class once where the professor was criminal procedure, and he posed a question. And you got to remember, in law school, most of the time you're not being taught by lawyers. You're being taught by scholars who don't know the first thing about how to practice law. They understand the theory of law. The guy poses a question, you know, how many laws are there? And so when we talk about laws, we talk about statutes, like, you know, we talk about regulations, like whatever they be. TSA regulations about taking your shoes off, that's a law, right? The traffic code has laws about driving certain miles per hour. There's local, state, federal, agency. And he said they started this project in the late 70s and 80s, and they stopped the project because they lost count of how many laws there were.
Yeah,
Holy
sure.
shit.
I was about to ask that. I was like, how many on average? How many? You know?
They couldn't quantify it.
No.
And this guy had the nerve to tell the class at that point, I don't think there's enough laws. I walked out of the class at that point. I don't know how he explained it next, but I just felt like, dude, you're missing it. Like, I think government's responsibility should be in part to every year stop talking about what you're going to do and talk about what you're going to cross out and revisit.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of laws now that are just obsolete.
Yeah. Especially on a state level too. Like there's some like crazy laws in certain states.
Yeah, there's bans against there's horse carriage laws in the books that you can get like arrested for because these laws were never updated from like the 1800s.
And there's like I got to fact check this one too, but I definitely heard this before, that there's like a state, like one of the towns in the state, I think it's in the Midwest, like you can't have ice cream. You can't hold an ice cream cone on like a Saturday or something like that. Like it's like weird shit like that. You know what I mean?
Well, how about New Jersey? You know, you can't pump your own gas. Now you can either embrace that, but sometimes when you're in a rush, you kind of want to get out of the car and pump your gas and get going, right? But it's illegal in New Jersey to pump your own gas.
You get fined for it, or thrown in jail?
I've never seen it in action. I don't know if anyone would even know how to enforce it.
And that's the crazy part. It's like, what is that gray area of, like, I'm breaking the law, but then like law enforcement looks the other way, versus like if I commit murder, law enforcement is not going to look the other way. So how do you like make something like ironclad? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it is.
I think the problem is the enforcement sector, right? So you have your legislative branch, your lawmakers that make the law, and the judicial branch interprets it, says whether or not it's been, if you're challenging it, if it makes sense. But the executive branch has to enforce it. And if you don't know the law, if you don't really know the works about the gas, if you're not educated and not trained on that, you're not going to know how to enforce it.
Yeah. Right.
So that's where it becomes a matter of keeping around the older generations in law enforcement and not just having them retire too young. You need to have that balance of experience.
Do you think we have
Yeah,
too, you think
Knowledge
we have
is
too many
leverage,
laws?
essentially.
I'm sorry?
You think we have too many laws?
Way too many laws. I mean, especially on the agency level where, I have a mortgage license, a title insurance license, my law license. Every one of those licenses has laws that regulate how that activity is supposed to be governed. And the agencies that are tasked with enforcing those laws and regulations, they don't know them because most of these are political figureheads. The Department of Banking and Insurance, right, or the Department of Treasury, Department of Education, they become replaced every 4 years, every time there's a new administration. And they don't get those positions for knowing their field. They get those positions for knowing the governor, for really helping the governor secure her seat, Governor Cheryl at the moment, right? So they may not, and then really it's a stepping stone to the next government position.
We're going to get rid of these laws and put these laws in place. And
But those are really, all they're really repealing when they do that are the more temporary ones. They just repeal what the last administration made. They don't really peel back to like if I was in charge of an agency, the first year I would just say everyone has to open these regulation books and revisit every single rule, and whether it's still applicable, whether it still makes sense. With technology changes, with you talk about an AI world, and this is where I found a huge gap in the legal market right now. Is AI is coming for a lot of industries, right? And this is not really about fear mongering. This is just about this is reality. Right?
It's just kind of the facts.
It's kind of a fact. When you sit down and use AI, you realize, holy crap, this can really do a lot. And I think the most misguided thought process right now is, this is BS, this is hallucinatory, this is just nonsense. The people that dismiss it, the naysayers, are missing the point. Is AI perfect right now? No. But has AI accomplished a lot more in the last 7 months than it did 7 months before that and 7 months before that? Is it growing exponentially every day? Yes. And that's why you have to be paying attention to this. You have to have some baseline understanding of how it works, because it will get to that point where it will run circles around you.
And you're left behind.
And you are left behind.
How do you see AI tying into your industry?
So, my father talked about skills. The key behind the running theme of being recession-proof was also that it's a skill-based profession. He believed that if I graduated college with like a Bachelor of Arts degree in English or psychology, there's no skill behind that. That's just going to be, what they call a white-collar job. It's going to be pushed around, subject to economic conditions. Having those skills that are invaluable. What are skills today? So if you're a doctor, you may eventually get AI to advance to a point where it assists with operations. I think it's starting to in some places, right? The question becomes whether you feel comfortable with a robot operating on your body, but that's something that will develop over time. Mm-hmm. But I would say AI is going to have a hard time replacing doctors. I don't think it's going to have a hard time replacing accountants.
Why is that?
Why is that?
With doctors, why do you think?
Because you still need that human element, right? Medical, especially in operations. Maybe for medical advice. I mean, so the advice sector is a little bit different, and that is where both medical and legal and really other areas can be parsed out from AI. So I'll parse that out for a moment. But when I think of doctors, I think more like the OR setting, right? I think about being in the operation room. And I think you need people that can think quick, that can pivot. I mean, yes, the machines can think quick, but the doctor is pivoting based on experience.
True.
Right? And AIs will build experience based on how you train them. But I don't know that AI can really develop human instinct and judgment the same way.
Plus they can't have empathy.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. Like that personal connection, right? Like, you might go to one doctor versus another doctor just because you like that doctor more or whatever the case is, right? Where they have the same experience.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, for sure.
My doctor's going to call me at any point.
To 11:45.
That's what it says on the calendar. They call whenever the hell they want, an hour before, hour
Gotcha.
after.
But yeah, I think
It's
I think
good reminder, just
yeah.
on topic.
But I think with doctors though, it's gonna be cool because because I saw this one doctor on Instagram and he uses AI, and he says the way that he uses it is basically when patients come in and they have a certain type of disease or something going on or trauma or whatever, like being able to input the blood type, what's going on with the patient, how he's responding, what his heart rhythm is like all these different elements that is going on. And then he, like, by experience, he can eliminate what's not wrong with him so he doesn't administer the wrong medicine or something like that. Now the AI can give him different options to be like, okay, well, yes, I've had this experience before, had that experience before, had this experience before, and what's going on right now is most likely this. You know what I mean? And I think that's the coolest part about it.
So it streamlines, right? It's more like operational. Like,
Yeah.
My buddy's a physical therapist, and my wife's a physical therapist. She's been, semi-retired for the last few years. She's jumping back into it, but taking notes after patient visits. When you're a physical therapist, you might see 15 patients a day, and then you have to take notes either between those visits, after those visits. So now AI kind of helps you make those notes a little bit easier. Streamlines, right? It could summarize. I know when I have client meetings, I'm able to record them, and I'm able to then see the transcript. I'm able to summarize that transcript, and it's just it's more transferable.
Right. It's a little bit more freeing and
Yeah, absolutely. And instead of staring down at a notepad, writing things down,
you could really be immersed.
you could be immersed. You could understand your client. They
Or,
always say,
or even like, what did you say again?
yeah, or pretending like you're listening, or we all space out, right? But the idea of being able to listen to someone instead of talking, right? They say that the best way you can really help someone is just listen.
So true. Yeah.
And when you have these tools at your disposal, you don't have to worry as much about anything other than listening and reading that person. Because AI, I don't know, maybe Tesla robot is going to be able to do this one day, but AI can't see your client. They can't see the facial expressions. They can't hear the tone in their voice. But you can, and that's really, so I think that's a skill in itself though, right? Empathy skills, human connection skills are skills. So when I was thinking about doctors before, I'm really thinking about, and I didn't really even know that about doctors, that they're doing that now, and that's pretty interesting. And I also know that there are some doctors who are using ChatGPT to streamline a diagnosis. Now, I hope it's not my doctor. I don't think it's a lot of doctors,
Yeah.
but at the same time, in my field, lawyers are doing the same thing, right? Lawyers will ask ChatGPT questions, and there's a difference, I think, between a lawyer asking ChatGPT a question, and I don't even care to say ChatGPT because that's just one of many tools to use, right? Let's say AI. A lawyer asking AI a question versus a layperson asking AI a question. The layperson just sees an answer and says, looks good, makes sense. They're confident in what they're saying. Because AI presents it as truth, right? When AI gives you an answer to a question, Google will give you a scatter of 15 articles that you have to really sort through and find what you think to be more reliable. But AI takes all that in the aggregate and gives you an answer. AI has been shown to give people false confidence because it very much it's confident when it presents its answers, and so people want to believe it and they want to present it as truth. People don't like, it's a known human nature thing. Confidence sells. If you're a salesperson and you're confident in what you're selling, you're going to make the sale.
Also, I don't want to do the research to prove that.
And so if AI is confident in its answer, so the key is, as a user, is knowing how to challenge it or knowing where the gaps are. If you're using AI to get legal advice, and that's why now AI is really starting to address that, whether it's because of lawsuits that are happening or because of the self-regulating profession of law, there is now less and less these platforms are giving you legal advice, right? There's a case recently that took place, company out in Illinois so OpenAI is being sued because a woman basically was suing the company that she worked for a workers' compensation case. She was not happy with a lawyer that she had, and ChatGPT effectively told her to fire her lawyer and just that she could handle the case herself. So she ends up filing all of these motions that just are frivolous. They have no meaning to them, and the company ends up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So the company turns around and sues OpenAI and says, you're responsible because we had to spend all this money because you're giving legal advice that you're not supposed to be giving. This is the first case of first impression. It's brand new, but it's a case that's now going to be monitored by a lot of legal professionals, a lot of AI,
Wow.
legal tech, because it becomes a matter of what is the liability of AI.
What was the case called?
I don't remember. It's just been
Well,
filed.
what's your kind of interpretation of all that?
I think AI should have the right guardrails in place, but if it's not going to, I think lawyers or any professionals that are going to use it need to have those guardrails. One statistic I saw was that 75% of lawyers are using AI every day in their practice, whether they're using it in form of chat, whether they're using it in the form of automation for their workflows, using it to build applications. I mean, each example I gave, I think less and less are using it for those purposes. But only 35% of lawyers may tell their clients that they're using AI.
Yeah.
And I think a big reason for that is lawyers want to be able to justify their value.
Right.
And that's where I think the industry is really heading for a big transformation. Because, like I said, AI may not be perfect now, and it may never be perfect, but when you see the trajectory, you have to realize that it won't replace the lawyer, it won't replace the need for legal specialized advice, but it will streamline the lawyer's day-to-day workflow. So if I'm a lawyer and I have a loose sense of the answer and I'm researching it through AI, if I just rely on AI's output as the truth, I'm committing malpractice. I'm actually, if I'm not disclosing to my client that I've used AI, now there's an expectation, there's certain ethical rules about how they have a right to know how you got to your answers, how you got to the work that you've done on their behalf. And if you're not disclosing the AI use, there are certainly ethical implications of that.
That was the next
Gotcha.
question I was about to ask you. I was going to say, do lawyers have a legal obligation to let you know that they're using AI?
So, when it comes to lawyers, there's legal obligations that really apply to just about anyone, but lawyers have ethical obligations, right? We have a code of rules of professional conduct.
Makes sense.
ABA, the American Bar Association, sets forth these model rules, and then states either can adopt those rules or not. So every state in the country has a code of rules of professional conduct. When it comes to AI, last year, the first rule on the list is Rule 1.0 on competence. And it requires that lawyers have to have a level of competence in the work that they're doing, whether that be competence as lawyers themselves, competence in their practice area. Ethically, they expect you to have competence on behalf of a client. So last year, the American Bar Association put forward an expanded definition of competence to also include competence in technology and legal technology. 40 states adopted that rule. Interestingly, one state rejected it outright, and that's New Jersey.
Wow.
New Jersey rejected the expanded definition, saying lawyers are expected to represent their clients in the most ethical way. That's already built into the rule. And I believe, respectfully, that the New Jersey Supreme Court made a grave error doing that, because
I agree with that.
lawyers don't know what they don't know. And I've taken time to really understand some of the ethical implications of AI, because I want to make sure that I know I'm using it correctly. I want to make sure that other lawyers know how they're using it.
So where do you see the most opportunity with the growth of AI in the industry that you're in?
I believe it's just buying back your time, getting that time back. I'm thinking about it more in terms of, well, time can work both ways. I work as a solopreneur, a small firm. We're in a different world than what you think of big law, your Harvey Specter, Suits law format, right? These big law firms, they already have these enterprise solutions in place. They have an IT department that's already ahead of the game. So from their end, it's going to be, the transformation there will be the billable hour. These big firms, their business model is how many hours a year they can bill their clients. Now, what happens when companies get a little bit more sophisticated? I have a very good friend that works for probably the number 2, 3 big firm in New Jersey. One of their clients is Johnson & Johnson, and he tells me that Johnson & Johnson has advised them that you need to tell us in your bills what work you're doing for AI or with AI, and you need to tell us how the price has been reduced because of it. So more sophisticated companies are not going to want to pay an hourly rate, 0.3 hours to write an email, when they know that you could prompt an email provider in 10 seconds to get that email out.
True.
they're not going to want to pay for, certain things will take time, but research takes a fraction of the time. That's usually the bulk of legal bills is going to be legal research. But now that it's going to be more automated and more streamlined, I mean, sure, there will be the work element of sifting through that research and verifying it.
Of course.
You have a famous case that came out of New York where this poor lawyer probably overworked. Now I'm on the other side, right? I'm back on the side of the small solo end of the spectrum where they are both running a practice and running a business. When you're in a big law firm, there is a department in the firm that's running the business of the firm. So that most of those lawyers there, they have time to do one thing, and that is be lawyers. On the other end of the spectrum, small lawyers, small firms and solo lawyers, they don't have that infrastructure. They are both a business owner and a lawyer. So they need to buy back their time. And one of this gentlemen coming out of New York probably didn't have the time, needed to get a brief filed on a case, went into ChatGPT, had ChatGPT write the entire brief, and submitted it to the court. Now, what the court found was the entire case, or the cases that were cited in the entire brief, were all fake. These were not real cases. ChatGPT was making cases up and citations to those cases.
That's crazy.
And
wow,
this lawyer got fined a few $1,000s. He got sanctioned by the court. And his name forever lives in this docket, And he's also forever known as the example lawyer of what not to do.
But would you really fault him on that?
Absolutely. And the reason why is because if I gave an intern an assignment to draft a brief, or an associate even, licensed lawyer, an associate working under me, I would always know that my name is on that at the end of the day, before that goes out the door. So
Absolutely.
You always got to review your output. Do I fault him for maybe at that point in time not knowing that those were fake cases? Maybe not, but now if any lawyer is to pass off a brief with a fake citation, that's really, you now have that awareness that can happen, and you now have a duty to verify those citations. The problem that I'm seeing is that more lawyers are seeing that edge case and saying, I'm not going to use it at all.
Well, that's the issue, I think, is they're using, like the guys that are using it to do the work. Where you got to look at it as like, you're not supposed to let it do the full work, let it do the nitty gritty stuff, and you got to fact check everything, right? So like, for example, like when a paralegal does like the research, or the associate does a research for a certain case or a trial that you're about to go on to, right? And they got to fact check or cross-reference different cases that had similar outcomes to prove your case, right?
The precedent.
The precedent. So I think it's like you can use AI to like go through these files and be like, show me some anomalies in these cases or where I can prove my point, versus like do the whole case for me. Yeah. But now, when you get those things back and you get the report back, now you can start to fact check. Okay, is this case real? Is that case real? Did this actually happen? Wow, I didn't know that this happened in this case. And then now you can start to build a case around, like in the 21st century, on how you should be building a case to work that trial. And I think that's the cool part about it.
Well, and really, these legal tools evolved even before AI. Like legal research used to be books. You'd see those commercials with the whole bookcase behind the lawyer. Those were books of statutes and cases, and talk about billing for legal research. You're going through books, and there was a whole methodology. When I was in law school, now they brought that online. They had maybe done that just a few years before I got to law school, where you could do legal research. There was a whole course on teaching us how to do research using like Boolean terms and the right keywords. You find cases, and what these books were able to do was talk about all the cases that have cited a case. The internet was able to make that much more instantaneous, where you could click on a case and see all the cases that have used that case. Because what you want, like you said, is similar fact patterns, similar things to present to the court of where this is a proper legal standard. So if it can produce those citations for you, any legal professional, whether they're an intern down to up to a managing partner, they have to then take those cases and really check those citations, not just for accuracy, but check it to expand on the potential other cases that they could apply to.
Yeah. And then now, instead of wasting your time looking at cases that have nothing to do with what you're trying to create precedents around, like, I don't know if I ever use that word.
Yeah, no, it's setting precedent and following precedent, absolutely.
Yeah. And like, it just makes your job 10 times faster.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, going back and what you said about your friend that works for that firm and the company asking, how did you reduce? I don't think that the billable hours could be reduced, but they should be paying a higher premium for the expertise of the lawyer. Because just like how you look at a plumber and it's like, well, why'd you play, that famous quote of, you're not paying me for my time, you're paying me for what I know, right? If he turns one faucet down and charges you $15,000 for it.
What I did in 15 minutes took me 15 years to learn.
Exactly. Right. And I think the art of building the actual case, like what I've seen with AI right now is it's not good at creating unique things. Like new things it can't do. It can only build off of what it knows, right? So I think building a case and defending someone and how you build the case is an art form, right? Just like how when we're creating content and creating a marketing game plan, it's an art form. We can come up with new ideas and ideation, right? I don't think AI can really get to the point where it creates unique new ideas because it's always machine learning off of us. And I think that's where we have the advantage over AI as human beings. You just got to use AI in your advantage to create that advantage.
So what I'm hearing is a direct response to the $1 million, $1 trillion question today. Will AI replace jobs? And in my field, in the legal field, will AI replace lawyers? I find it incredible how many people genuinely believe that AI will replace lawyers. And I'm sure you may find the same way in your field. You hit the nail on the head. It's not going to replace anyone or anything, but it's a matter of, are the people using it are going to replace the people that are not using it? And I firmly believe that is the case. If you are not using AI to streamline your practice, to grow your business, billing time, I understand, like, it's going to turn into more of a value-based thing, but if time is the name of the game and time is reduced to do things, it's going to have to be more of a hybrid model, which already exists. There's already hybrid models, but that emphasis on value will have to come in first. Because a lot of lawyers don't know how to justify their value. They just they show the hours and they say, this is the time that I put into it. I personally, as a professional, have never cared to bill that way. I don't know how to justify as someone that, it may take me a longer time to do things than it takes the next person, but I understand that's probably the most objective way to set value. So will it be a flat fee basing model or a subscription? I think really that's where the model will shift. But you have to realize that these big firms, where literally the core requirement is to work 2,200 billable hours a year, that model is going to shift dramatically.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you another question, too. When a trial is going on, do you have to present cases and evidence before the trial starts? Can you present new evidence during the trial or no?
If the new evidence didn't exist before, like if it was unanticipated, you can't hide it and present it for the first time during trial. This came up recently. Who was on trial recently in the media? It was big. Out of Colts Neck, the gentleman killed his brother and his brother's wife and kids.
Oh, yes, okay.
Big trial that went on, and the defense attorney tried to pull a fast one and use evidence during the trial that she certainly had in her possession. There's no surprises, but information can come to light that, wasn't known.
See, that's where I think AI is going to, I think trials might get longer, because say I have a great defense case, right? And it's presented and all this stuff, but during the trial, as the, what's the other side? There's the defense and
the prosecution.
And the prosecution looks at that and goes, now that they're putting all this, evidence to light, or, because they have evidence before too, right? They get to see everything too.
So the prosecutor actually has a constitutional duty to give the defense all of their evidence.
Okay.
The defense, I think, has a little latitude with cross-examination and what they can give them. But the idea is that if you're going to go to trial, if you're going to use it, you have to show it.
But say during a trial now, like if something comes up that they didn't anticipate, or maybe it changed their point of view, now you can go back to AI within that same day and try to find something else that's new evidence and be like, oh shit, we just found something.
Because you had a starting point.
Yeah, and it's not going to take you like another 2 weeks to find that evidence because you got to ravage through all this stuff, right? Like you can really find new arguments in many different ways with AI.
So you're opening an interesting door, because what you're talking about is the person that finds this stuff, in the sense, in the context of a criminal defense lawyer or prosecutor, is an investigator, right? Mm-hmm. Prosecutors are using investigators that work for their office, and defense lawyers are using retired law enforcement, usually as private investigators. They're the ones that are going out and getting the answers. They're the ones that are going out and taking those statements. When someone's recanting, when they find out in the middle of the trial that someone has recanted to her cousin that it never happened, mm-hmm. the investigator's going out and taking that statement. So AI, and I think about this a lot in terms of law enforcement. I have a lot of friends that are police officers, and I ask them, is your department using AI? And they say no. I'm stupefied that, like, we saw the state budget address by Governor Sherrill a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And in anticipation of that address, I was wondering, how is she going to talk about AI? I don't think she said the word AI once in her entire budgetary presentation. Like, how do you present yourself as a forward-thinking leader?
Right.
Think about our school system. Think about, I have 3 beautiful small children. They're, my youngest just turned 4. My middle will turn 6 in a couple weeks, and my oldest will be 8 in July. And they got the same homework that we have, only it's actually more annoying. Like math problems, 7 + 3 = 10. How'd you figure that out? How'd you feel when you figure that out? It's like, what are we teaching our kids?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in China, they're vibe coding probably at like 2.5 years old.
So true.
So much has to fundamentally be revisited.
No, you're not allowed to use that.
You're not allowed to use AI.
And the crazy part is you look at a software or web software like Notebook LM, for example.
Beautiful tool, Notebook LM.
Yeah, and take your calculus book, PDF, dump that into Notebook LM, create a podcast around it from Notebook LM, and I guarantee you that thing teaches your child better than the teacher teaching at the school.
I'm in school, so I know, because I have 2 classes this semester, one on tax planning on real estate transactions and one on estate planning. Estate planning is already part of the practice, but this is like an official class by like professionals at NYU. Got to take it to understand like the theory behind it, right?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
That book was $750. I'm now 2 months into the semester. I still haven't bought that book. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around paying $750 for a book.
Yeah.
Tax planning and real estate transactions gave us a 1,000-page PDF. Guess what the first thing I did with that PDF was? I launched it right into Google Notebook LM, and it organizes it. It creates, decks. It has
lessons if you want to.
And you can prompt it. Notebook LM is the most, so long as you're feeding it truth and accuracy, it is the single most authoritative source of truth for chat type research, because it's researching off your sources, your tools, and any attorney who is not using Notebook LM right now needs to learn about Notebook LM.
As a lawyer, what are your favorite, chatbots, AI chatbots to use?
So my favorite chatbots are really, it boils to Claude. Right now, I guess the big 3 or 4, you have ChatGPT is the mainstream, the America Online of the chatbots. Then there was Claude. Then there's Grok, that's Elon Musk's tool. And then Google Gemini. Each company, each AI system has its own pros and cons. But from a chat perspective, I find Claude to be the most advanced one. It really excels in reasoning. It excels in problem solving and I actually read, so these AI companies set benchmarks, which is basically how much they are improving in an area against each other. And Claude's has the highest benchmark in terms of not telling you what you want to hear. So when I was saying before about confidence that the AI presents, what does confidence really equate to? And sometimes it's telling people what they want to hear. And I found that very quickly when I was using ChatGPT.
I find it so annoying.
I find it very annoying. And even when you challenge it, right? You have to, any good AI use is not really so much about the AI system itself as much as it is about what you're feeding it. I think people dismiss AI very quickly when it gives false answers or vague answers, and it's like, well, what'd you tell it to do?
That was the worst decision that OpenAI did, because before one of the updates, I don't know if it was 2 or 3, it was telling you strict things, like it was telling you how things were. and then they made one shift. I think when 3 came out, that was like more comforting. And now it's like, great job, you're doing so good. Like that's a great answer. Yes, it does work like that. And then when it's like trying to agree with you, now it's telling you bullshit.
Yeah.
And then it's not challenging you on anything.
Right.
I think that's the worst mistake because AI should challenge you on certain things. No, that's not the way it is. And even though that might be a more authoritative or more confidence level of like, maybe I got to fact check this. I think as machine learning goes on, like it's just going to get better and better at finding sources and information versus it trying to comfort you and agree with everything that you're saying because it's going to machine learn on agreeing with you. And then what happens then? Then anything you say is going to be true, right?
Well, like anything else, it's a business, right? They want to be able to, they want users that are happy, and people want to hear what they want to hear. So
it's crazy.
They're happy to give it that.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. But, you know, what Claude, so you just said something about...
Pause 1 second. Check your phone because it's 11:55. Just don't want your doctors calling.
I know because it shakes.
Okay. Okay. All right, cool.
I get like spam calls all day.
You were saying one thing about Claude?
No, so what did you say right before? You said
the confidence agreeing with you.
That you want it to
challenge you.
And you need to challenge it too. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It's really a symbiosis of between the AI and the person. And that comes down to knowing how to use it. It's not just about the prompt. These tools now have developed skills. You can write a markdown, which is effectively like a word pad, write down of what rules you want it to implement when it's talking to you. You can set down skills that you want it to have. So the rules that you have to create will create a much better output. And I have rules in place when I use AI. Never guess, never make assumptions. Mm-hmm. Explain me the answer and then explain it to me again in a more simple term. And that's usually when I'm using software development and building the tools out. I want to, it shows a problem that I don't really understand.
Right,
just throwing all these words out there.
Yeah,
like,
I'm the same way. I feel like sometimes if you try to solve a problem, it'll just, throw out a bunch of information. Yeah. I don't know for sure if it's going to get me from point A to point B, reading through it, from all the information it's giving me. So I like to kind of prompt it in a way where it's like a dialogue.
Right.
So it guides me step by step through the process. And if I see that it's heading towards the wrong direction, then I can kind of, start prompting it to start going in the direction that I want it to go.
Like it'll say the database has been configured or there's a lot of node, this, that. And I'm just like, all right. So 2 days ago, I'm building out this great tool in my firm to help me automate my estate planning practice and streamline my ability to talk to clients and give them better products. And I told, using Google Anti-Gravity, which is just a very mind-blowing product in itself. And that's the thing with AI. Every week, a new product comes out. And just as you're starting to get comfortable with one, it blows your mind. It's really fun to watch in real time. But Google Anti-Gravity sets rules and parameters as well. And I said, listen, when you do your little fix here with your code, I need you to then explain it to me like a 36-year-old man that has absolutely no IT, AI knowledge, exactly what you did. And it actually went a step further, and knowing that I was building a legal tool, it explains it to me like a lawyer. It analogizes it with the legal, like say you're doing this on a trial, and then this is happening with the evidence, and now you need to do that. So I think that's pretty neat that I didn't ask it to explain it to me like a lawyer, but it knows that it's talking to a lawyer.
It's so contextualized at this point.
That context is everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where most people go wrong. Like I think we were talking about earlier, right? They're like, build me a marketing plan.
Build me a marketing plan. And listen, it's not where ChatGPT will say, yeah, you got it. And it will spit out it doesn't know what you want a marketing plan about. It doesn't even care. Right. It's going to give you something that looks good. And it's going to show you what it can do. Claude will say, all right, time out. Marketing plan on what? What are you trying to do? What's your time frame? What's your rollout? And it organically does that. But I still put in my prompts, my rules, ask me any question that you have. Don't make any guesses. I want it to basically not make those assumptions and really just, and then I love seeing the questions that it asks because then right away I can see where it's going.
Oh yeah.
Do you think it could be robbing you from your creativity at all, or do you think that it kind of ignites the the work process.
I see that argument being presented, right? There's studies going on, and every time you see the word studies, you actually have to open the study and see that like 40 people were studied, right? So it's studies, take them with a grain of salt, but they're saying that people are becoming less creative, or people are becoming less, that over time AI will make people, I guess, dumber,
Right.
for lack of a better word.
If you type into the chat, make me a marketing plan, sure.
Yeah, but I think that's where, you know, most people go wrong, and that's that's the perspective that most people have, because, you know, they go onto this AI chat, and then it's just build me the theory of this thing or whatever, right? It's not like they got the idea and it's like, okay, I've got this idea in my head. Now, how do I turn this into reality, right? So without these tools, essentially, that sometimes that process becomes impossible, or I got to pay someone else to do it, and I don't even know how to start it or whatever, right? I don't even know what the first step is, right? So when you kind of have these chat bots, right, you get the idea, it's sort of exciting, and then you kind of use it as a tool to then get you there as fast as possible, right?
And you pivot, and the word they use is iterate, right? You're iterating, you're constantly pivoting with the way you want to use it based on the output that it's giving you. So I think when people say that it's going to make us dumber or less creative, that's when, if you're just relying on AI as the answer, if you're just taking what it gives you and spitting it back out, 100% your brain over time will melt. If you are using it, like you just said, and being able to add your own mind to it, your own spin on it, you know, that's really going to be the path to success, because it's not, you can't rely on any tool. And that's what people have to remember. I see a lot of criticism about AI is making people less productive because they're spending more time, you know, trying to figure out the tools or trying to implement the tools. It's easy to say that in a vacuum, but look back at history, you know, when the internet came out. Do you think everybody was able to log on the internet and figure that out?
So true.
When Microsoft Excel and Microsoft PowerPoint came out, that took time for companies and employees to understand. So, and even till now, how many people really understand PowerPoint or Excel? Yeah. So, yes, there's always going to be a snag as you're learning something new, but embrace it and take the time to learn it, because if it works, and listen, there's so many tools out there coming out at such a fast speed. I remember when I went on my own in 2017, I made my own website on Squarespace. I felt it was a pretty polished website. It wasn't necessarily the most secure. It didn't need to be. It was more informational. But I want to say 2017 was maybe, 5 or 6 years out after Wix and WordPress and Squarespace let the everyday person be able to do that.
Right.
Think about how fast AI has let people do what it can do. Like, just take a moment to measure that scale.
Well, I showed you the website today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful website.
10 minutes.
Very visually attractive, and like I'm trying to build stuff like that, but I'm not a visual person, so I just build these things out, and I don't care, because as long as it works. Like when I used to get people calling me, asking me, my favorite thing was website designers. They would ask me about colors. The first question they'd ask me, I'm like, dude, I don't care about colors. Just make it work. You know? But then they'd ask me, you know, can you find me a website as an example to what you want? And I felt that was just such like a shitty way to say, can you just make my job easier and just give me the exact website you want it to look like, and do the exact same thing?
That's a fair point.
You know, when I talk to doctors,
like, you're a designer. you should be the person with the answer. That's why I'm hiring you.
When I have a doctor and they ask me, you know, are you a smoker? Are you a drinker? I say no to everything, right? Mm-hmm. The reason I say no to everything is because I want them to figure out the answer themselves. I've seen doctors before to say, oh, well, that's why, because, you know, your diet sucks. That's this and that. I give them as little bit of information as I can. That may be a little bit of a sociopathic thing, but I want the doctor to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
Website designers. So if website designers today are still doing that, good luck making a career, you know, because a person can just as well do that to AI.
That's such a true point, dude. It's like, it's so true.
And I'm not saying website designers aren't necessary anymore, or that, you know, my cousin's a software developer. They're getting laid off left and right. And that's a huge miscalculation going on, where the industry feels that we don't need software developers anymore. No, you do, because AI is still learning how to do its job.
Right. And also, not everybody wants to do it. Right. So, like, if you could speed up the process, well, now, let's say I have that skill. Like I could just speed up the process
Sure.
and, do it better and more efficient, right? Like it's not really a threat if you look at through it that look at it through that lens,
Yeah.
essentially.
You may know how to do it, but you may say, all right, well, that's for someone else to do, right?
Right.
That's the power of delegation.
And I feel like that's kind of what you've been saying, like, you know what I mean? So it's essentially, like use it to your advantage, essentially.
Use it as a tool. It's part of your arsenal with other tools. It's not to be an exhausted tool. And listen, right now, the way AI is used, everyone gets it for free. Everyone gets it for $20 a month. It does not comport remotely with what is actually going on as far as what it costs. So AI token usage, right? You hear that word tokens and you think, whenever I hear token, I think of coins and like Donkey Kong, It's like, but token usage of 1 million token contexts. What is a token? A token is a character that is being outputted out or inputted in. Like when you're typing in every letter, every character is a token. Every token is a character. So they'll say they have like 1 million token context window. That's what that means. And that's just burning through data. And that data is coming from data centers, right? Right now, they're building out all these data centers, but the projection out is saying that they're going to need a lot more data centers for the demand. And you can only build so many data centers at a time. So
look at OpenAI. It's like, what do they need to be at worth $4 trillion or something like that?
They're asking for about $800 billion, and their output last year was $14 billion, or their profit, their revenue. Not the profit, the revenue was $14 billion. So keep that in context, right? They didn't set aside $14 billion. That's how much the company raised $20 subscriptions. That's not a sustainable model.
Oh, no.
But what people don't realize is they're doing that now to get the context that they need across millions of uses. What was the number you said before about how many people are using it per week? It's still not even a scratch of the surface.
I think when I looked up Claude, it was 30 million per month active users.
And think about how long it took for someone to get there on AOL, how long it took for Facebook to get to those numbers. Yeah. And we've gotten there pretty fast with Claude and these other tools.
But that's 0.3% of people in the globally using it. 0.3%. So not even 1%.
And right now it's free or relatively inexpensive because they need to really leverage the population. But it's not like AI is going to go away. Anyone is grossly misguided if they think that AI is just a phase. There's going to be a correction, just as there was with the .com correction. But I didn't see the internet disappear after that. If you think AI is disappearing, you're lying to yourself.
It only got bigger.
It got bigger. It got more. It's in your pocket. It's on your watch. It can be on your heart monitor.
Dude, that's so true. I feel like people just want negative gossip to talk about.
I think
when you talk about the internet, for example, oh yeah, well the .com bubble. Look how many businesses went out of business. And it's yeah, but look how many freaking businesses there are now online.
Look who survived. I mean, lawyers who are not on the internet, right? Let's say you're not even using the internet in terms of your workflow, but you're using it to promote you. Think about how much better that puts you ahead of another lawyer who doesn't, right? Think about if you're if you're a lawyer doing content like we're doing right now, and we're making media and we're educating people. If you're adding value, that's the key, is adding that value. If AI is going to give you more time, because no matter what there is, whether it's the internet, whether it's AI, there's still only 24 hours in a day. So if you have the time now to put more thought into what your clients want and how to serve them better, provide them value, then that's something you should be embracing. But I think there is that fear-mongering aspect. I've read that part of what's fueling that is that companies are promoting that because they want companies to be able to leverage better against employees who, let's say they want to raise, and the response may be, well, AI can do your job. I don't need you. That's really more applicable in the white-collar context, right? And that kind of goes back full circle to where I was as far as saying, I'm self-employed because I never want someone to tell me that I can be replaced.
So I actually kind of have a question, sort of kind of wrap out, not really, but so for you said a smaller size, law firm, and maybe AI could be a little bit intimidating. Maybe you're just kind of using it surface level. What would you tell them essentially? Or what would you recommend for those type of people to start actually using this as a tool? Like what would be your recommendation? Because it could be very intimidating, especially for like an older audience.
So that's a great question. And I think a lot of lawyers don't know where to start. I think AI is very overwhelming right now with the number of tools, the number of literature, and a lot is out there. And you need to find an authority. You need to find someone to talk to that understands it. Find a lawyer that understands AI, that understands not so much what you can use AI for, but what you cannot use AI for or what you should not use AI for. We have our ethical code. We have things that we have to think about. And AI, as it stands today, without the proper guardrails, will put our profession at a considerable risk for both ethics and malpractice. I believe that AI can augment and improve an attorney's workflow and an attorney's, good life, but it can also disrupt it and create bigger problems for the lawyer, which in turn will be problems for the clients. So my advice to any lawyer is, if you don't understand AI, ask questions to the right people. I learned a lot about AI. I'm continuing to learn every day. I've decided to dedicate a lot of my time into learning it and to educating other lawyers on how they can implement it in their workflows, in their representation, in a way that does not expose, confidentiality issues, where they're breaching confidentiality, where they're able to protect the data, able to give competent and reliable information to their clients and represent them well. I think that the biggest advice I'd say is, do not turn your head and close your eyes and think it's going to go away. It's not. The lawyers who use AI today will last and will, what's the word I'm looking for? Will flourish much further than the ones that do not. There are lawyers today that don't use the internet, who never really caught on to the internet and were still able to do their work. I don't think that the lawyers who are not using AI will have that same benefit.
Love that,
man.
And I'm super excited to see kind of where this is headed, especially in the law space.
I'm excited to see how your brand plays out and building your brand together for the next,
Very, very exciting.
No, I appreciate that. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having fun mapping it out, talking to you guys about it, and I think that I intend to create a lot of value in this space, and I look forward to the journey.
That's awesome, man. And I think one last thing is just going off your thought. I think with us being in the media space, AI is going to take and be able to do a lot of the nitty gritty, and I think it's more important now than ever to create a personal brand or to create a media outlet of your actual company that puts out content and creates a likeliness of yourself, because at some point it's going to be, who do I like more? Who do I want to do business with more, right? And I don't care if they're using AI or not.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good concept to think about, because that's where the future is headed. And it's just important to be on top of that personal brand in the media. It's like, just like how newspapers were and magazines were and all that stuff, right? It's like the likeliness is going to play a huge factor on who I want to do business with.
I mean, I was working with a marketing company that was very easy to work with. I had a quarterly call with a young lady, relatively inexpensive service. They gave me a template library for social media posts, for email campaigns, for gifts to clients. It seemed great, but meeting you guys and seeing the actual value of that theory, but also the practical part of it, of the brand, that's what good marketing is, understanding the real brain behind it. That's a value that I can't really measure. It's incredible. I've gotten more value just working with you guys in a couple months than I have got from any marketing company that I've ever worked for.
I really appreciate that.
They try to quantify it to deliverables, 3 Facebook posts a week, check. That doesn't mean anything. This is all just, and I would say the same thing about AI. It's not about the tool of the week. It's not about the best prompting. I mean, all that matters, but it's just understanding the overarching reason of what you're intending to accomplish with it. That's the noise that I think a lot of lawyers need to work through, and that's the noise that I intend to help them work through and to succeed.
Well, awesome, Adam.
Thank you for coming on, and we appreciate you. I think this is super interesting conversation. I think it's going to do really well, organically, because AI is a huge hot topic right now. Where can they find you on socials?
Right now it's adam.j.elias, but I think we're going to pivot to adamelias.ai pretty soon.
All
Okay,
right,
awesome.
man. Thank you for being here. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
Till the next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
Thanks, man.